It happens fast. One moment your budgie is sitting calmly on your finger, feathers smooth, eyes half closed. You're doing what you always do, talking softly, maybe stroking the top of its head, just spending time together the way you have dozens of times before. And then it bites you. Not a playful nibble, a real bite. Sharp enough to make you pull your hand back. Sharp enough to sting. And you don't understand why. Because nothing changed. You didn't do anything differently. You weren't being rough or careless. You were being gentle, the same way you always are. And your bird, the one that stepped up onto your hand this morning without hesitation, the one that chirps when you walk into the room, just bit you like you were a threat. Most people's first instinct in that moment is to assume something is wrong with the bird, that it's aggressive, that it's unpredictable, that maybe it doesn't like them as much as they thought. But here's what the research on budgies behavior consistently shows. Almost none of those bites mean what you think they mean. In the vast majority of cases, a budgie that bites is not being aggressive. It is not turning on you. It is not suddenly a different bird than the one you've been bonding with for months. It is communicating. And today, we're going to learn exactly what it's trying to say. Because once you understand the real reasons budgies bite, and there are several, and they are very different from each other, you will never look at that bite the same way again. You'll start to see it for what it actually is, a signal, a message, a small creature trying to reach you in the only language it has that you can't seem to miss. Stay with me, because one of the reasons on this list will surprise you, and the last one will completely reframe the relationship you thought you understood. Before we begin, what a bite actually is. Budgies are prey animals. They are small, they are light, and in the wild, almost everything bigger than them wants to eat them. Their entire nervous system is built around threat detection and rapid response. They cannot afford to be slow. They cannot afford to be wrong. This matters because it means that everything a budgie does, every posture, every sound, every movement, is, at some level, about safety, about reading the environment, about deciding whether the world around them is predictable and safe or unpredictable and dangerous. A bite is the last option, not the first. Before a budgie bites, it almost always gives warnings. Feathers pulled tight against the body, eyes pinning, pupils rapidly expanding and contracting, a slight lean away from whatever is approaching, a low, short vocalization that is distinct from its normal chatter. The problem is that most owners don't know what those signals look like, so they miss them, and the bird, having tried and failed to communicate through every other available channel, reaches for the one signal that is impossible to ignore. It bites, which means that in almost every case, a bite is not a beginning. It is an ending. It is what happens when every earlier attempt at communication went unnoticed. Understanding that changes everything. Reason 1, the fear bite. This is the most common bite, and the one most frequently misread as aggression. A budgie that is afraid will bite, not because it wants to hurt you, because it is trying to survive what it perceives as a genuine threat. Think about what the world looks like from inside a budgie's nervous system. A hand moving toward it is, by the baseline logic of a prey animal, a potential predator. It doesn't matter that you've handled this bird 100 times. It doesn't matter that your hands have only ever meant safety and food and gentle contact. In certain conditions, when the bird is startled, cornered, in an unfamiliar environment, or simply having a high-anxiety day, the ancient part of its brain overrides the learned part, and it bites. The situations that most commonly trigger a fear bite are specific. Reaching into the cage rather than letting the bird step out on its own terms is one of the biggest. A budgie's cage is its territory, its safe space. A hand entering that space without warning reads as an intrusion, even from a trusted person. Other common triggers, approaching from above, which mirrors how aerial predators strike. Moving too quickly, making unexpected loud noises while handling the bird. Attempting to handle a bird that is already in a heightened state, one that has been startled recently, or that is reacting to something in the environment you haven't noticed. The fear bite is the bird saying, "I feel trapped. I feel threatened. Please stop." It is not aggression. It is desperation. And the response that makes it worse, pulling away sharply, reacting loudly, showing distress, confirms to the bird that yes, something in this situation was worth fearing. The nervous system learns that biting works, that it stops the threatening thing from continuing, which leads directly to the second reason your budgie bites. Reason 2, the learned bite. This one is uncomfortable to talk about, because it means that some bites are unintentionally, without any malice, trained by the owner. Here is how it happens. A young budgie, still settling into its home, nips at your finger during handling. Maybe it's a fear bite. Maybe it's just exploratory. Budgies use their beaks the way humans use their hands, to test surfaces, gauge textures, understand their environment. The nip is mild. It doesn't really hurt, but you react. You pull your hand back. You make a sound. You put the bird down and end the interaction. From your perspective, you're just responding naturally to being nipped. From the bird's perspective, something entirely different just happened. It learned that biting ends the interaction. And if the interaction was something it wanted to end, if it was overstimulated or tired or simply not in the mood for handling, then biting just became a tool, a reliable one, a fast one. Over time, with enough repetitions, the behavior solidifies. The bird bites not because it is afraid, not because it is in pain, but because biting has been reliably rewarded with exactly the outcome it wanted. You taught it, without meaning to, without knowing you were teaching anything at all. Reason 3, the overstimulation bite. This is the bite that confuses people the most, because it happens during affection. You're stroking your budgie's head feathers. It's leaning into your finger. Its eyes are half closed. It looks completely relaxed, completely content. And then, with no visible warning, it bites you. Not hard, usually, but it bites. And you sit there genuinely puzzled, because the bird looked like it was enjoying itself. It was enjoying itself, right up until the moment it wasn't. What happened is called overstimulation. And understanding it requires thinking about a budgie's nervous system in a different way. Birds experience touch differently than humans do. Their feathers are not passive decoration. They're sensory organs, connected to nerve endings, constantly feeding the bird information about its environment. Prolonged physical contact, even gentle contact, can accumulate into sensory overload faster than most owners realize. Think of it this way. Imagine someone giving you a head massage. For the first few minutes, it feels wonderful. But if it continues past a certain point, past the moment your nervous system has had enough, it starts to feel irritating, even overwhelming. You'd want it to stop. If you couldn't communicate that with words, you might eventually flinch away or knock the hand aside. Your budgie bit you. The signals before an overstimulation bite are easy to miss. A slight tension returning to the feathers. A shift in posture from leaning in to leaning slightly away. The eyes opening again, pupils returning to normal size. A subtle flick of the tail. The bird is telling you, that's enough. I've had enough. If you miss those signals, and most people do, because the bird still looks relaxed overall, the bite follows. Not as aggression, as a reset button, as the only option left to make the overwhelming sensation stop. The fix for this is learning to read the threshold and stopping before the bird reaches it. Shorter sessions. Attention to body language. Understanding that a bird that has had enough contact is not rejecting you. It is simply regulating its own sensory experience. That is a healthy thing. That is a bird that trusts you enough to communicate. Reason 4, the hormonal bite. If you've had your budgie for more than a year, you may have already experienced this one without knowing what it was. Budgies go through hormonal cycles. In the wild, these cycles align with breeding seasons, longer days, warmer temperatures, changes in food availability, and they produce significant shifts in behavior. In captivity, those triggers are less consistent, but the hormonal response still happens. During a hormonal period, your budgie is not entirely the bird you know. Hormones flood its system and alter the way it perceives and responds to everything around it. A bird that is normally gentle may become territorial and reactive. A bird that has never shown aggression may start defending its cage with unusual intensity. A bird that has always tolerated handling may bite more readily, more sharply, and with less warning than before. This is not a personality change. It is a biological state, and it is temporary. The mistake most owners make during this period is assuming something has gone permanently wrong, that the bond has broken, or that the bird has become aggressive in some lasting way. So they handle the bird less, react with more anxiety when it bites, and inadvertently extend the period of stress for both of them. Understanding that hormonal behavior is a phase, not a shift in character, changes how you respond to it. You give the bird more space. You reduce handling pressure. You keep the environment calm. And you wait. The bird you knew will come back. It was never really gone. Reason 5, the pain bite. This is the most important one to understand, and the one that carries the most responsibility. Budgies hide pain. This is not stubbornness or secrecy, it is survival. In the wild, a visibly sick or injured bird is a target. Predators watch for weakness, so birds have evolved to mask it, to continue behaving as normally as possible even when something is wrong, to protect themselves by appearing healthy for as long as they can. Which means that by the time a bird's pain or discomfort becomes visible in obvious ways, fluffed feathers all day, sitting on the cage floor, significant changes in droppings, or eating, it has often been unwell for a considerable time already. Before those visible signs appear, the only clue you may get is a change in how the bird tolerates handling. A budgie that has an injury, an infection, respiratory distress, a digestive issue, or any internal source of discomfort will often become more bite-prone. Not because its temperament has changed, but because being touched in certain ways, being moved or held, now produces or worsens pain. And the bite is the only signal it has to tell you. Something hurts. I don't know how to tell you, but something is wrong. If your budgie's biting has increased suddenly, without any obvious behavioral explanation, without a corresponding change in the environment, without the hormonal or overstimulation context we've already described, pay attention. Take it seriously. A vet visit is not an overreaction. A sudden, unexplained increase in biting behavior in an otherwise well-socialized bird is worth investigating. You may be receiving a distress signal that you've been interpreting as bad temper. Reason 6, the love bite. We've talked about fear, about learned behavior, about overstimulation and hormones, and hidden pain. Now we get to the one that reframes everything. Because not every bite is a warning. Not every nip is a signal that something has gone wrong. Some of what you've been interpreting as biting, particularly the soft, gentle pressure your budgie applies when it's sitting quietly on your hand or near your face, is not aggression at all. It is affection. Budgies are intensely social animals. In the wild, they live in large flocks where physical bonding behaviors are constant. Mutual preening, contact sitting, beak-to-beak interaction, gentle nibbling of feathers and skin. These behaviors are not incidental to their social life. They are central to it. They are how trust is expressed, how bonds are formed and reinforced, how a bird communicates to another. You are safe. You are mine. I choose you. When a well-bonded budgie sits with you and gently nibbles your finger, your nail, your earlobe, the edge of your shirt, it is engaging in a behavior that, in the wild, it would only share with its closest flock companions. It is grooming you. The difference between a love bite and a warning bite is almost entirely in the quality of the pressure and the context in which it happens. A love bite is soft, exploratory, rhythmic, without urgency. A warning bite is sharp, quick, and followed by a physical withdrawal from the source of the threat. One comes from a relaxed bird in a calm moment. The other comes from a bird that has reached the end of its communication options. Once you know the difference, you feel it immediately. The gentle, curious pressure of a bird that trusts you completely, testing the texture of your skin, mimicking the preening it would do for a flock companion. It took you being nipped by the bird you love to discover that it was loving you back. The language you were missing. Let's pull all of this together, because there is a through line that connects every reason on this list. Your budgie bites because it is communicating. Every single type of bite we've covered, the fear bite, the learned bite, the overstimulation bite, the hormonal bite, the pain bite, comes from a bird that tried other things first. It changed its posture. It shifted its weight. Its eyes gave signals. Its feathers moved. Its vocalizations shifted. It tried to tell you, in a dozen small ways, what it was feeling. And when those smaller signals went unnoticed, it reached for the one signal that couldn't be ignored. The problem was never aggression. The problem was a language barrier. You didn't know what the signals looked like. The bird didn't know how to speak yours. And the gap between you produced a bite that felt like a betrayal but was, in reality, a desperate attempt at connection. Understanding this doesn't just change how you respond to biting. It changes how you see your bird entirely. Every time your budgie pulls its feathers tight, that's a word. Every time it pins its eyes, that's a sentence. Every time it leans away from your approaching hand, that's a full paragraph that says, "I'm not ready right now, and I need you to see that." Learning to read those signals, to actually slow down and pay attention to the tiny behavioral vocabulary your bird has been using all along, is what separates a relationship built on guesswork from a relationship built on genuine understanding. What the bite was actually saying. Think back to the last time your budgie bit you. Maybe it was a fear bite. The bird felt cornered and you didn't notice the warning signs. Maybe it was overstimulation. The session went a few minutes longer than the bird's nervous system could comfortably handle. Maybe it was a learned response that developed so gradually you never saw it forming. Maybe, and this thought deserves a quiet moment, maybe it was a pain signal. A small, urgent message from a creature that couldn't tell you directly that something was wrong. Or maybe it was a love bite. Gentle pressure from a bird that chose you as its flock, that was doing the only kind of grooming it knows, that was expressing affection in the most intimate way available to it. Whatever it was not random. It was not cruelty. It was not the sign of a broken bond or a bird that has turned against you. It was a message. And now you speak a little more of the language. The next time your budgie bites, before you react, pause. Just for a moment. Ask yourself what was happening in the seconds before. What the bird's posture looked like. Whether anything in the environment had changed. Whether the session had gone on longer than usual. Whether your bird has been behaving differently in other ways lately that you might have been explaining away. The answer is usually there. You just have to know what you're looking for. What's the most surprising bite story you have with your budgie? Drop it in the comments. I'd genuinely like to know what was happening and what you think it meant.